We've looked at separating the book of Deuteronomy into certain sections. People come up with 3, sometimes 4, depending on how you count. The focus of our attention was chapters 12 to 26. Deuteronomy chapter 12 begins by saying, "These are the statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do in the land." My subsection title says the Book of the Covenant. So this is the arrangements that God is making for his people as they enter into the land of Canaan. We said that there was a preparatory message for the people in the wilderness time period, and that was Exodus chapter 15. That was the Song of Moses. That's what it was called then as well. It was to guide and direct them for that wilderness time period, which was a preparation to go into Canaan. And now as they enter into Canaan, they're going to have another song, we can express it that way, which is the same song that Moses gave in the wilderness, but it's specifically directed to the needs of the people as they go into Canaan. And we've discussed what the issues are concerning that change. We can call it a change in dispensation. There are a number of issues that we can draw from chapter 12, verses 1 to 5, maybe 1 to 6, and hopefully that has some relevancy or some meaning for us. We also now want to look at those chapters from 12 to 26 and see if we can tease out some different themes or some different concepts or ideas as we go through those chapters. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? I heard previous lesson. I didn't hear the first bit. What about the previous lesson? So the question is, what changes do we as individuals, as groups, as bodies need to make in order to come in line into agreement with God's word? So I'm going to avoid answering that question because it's a bigger question, it's a bigger issue than just that one of culture. It's the philosophical problem or the idea of what our message is all about. What is it that we're trying to do? What is it that God is trying to do for us? So I want to address that as a separate subject. Maybe we'll do it as a separate class or in a question and answer. So I'm not avoiding the question, but I want to address it because it's a bigger issue than what we just addressed in the last class. So I think it's an important question for us to deal with. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 5. Can you come a little bit closer so I can hear you? So we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 4 and 5, and we were looking at that in relationship to what's happening today generally. And then you spoke about specifically here at the school, and you said what?
The dynamic in verse 5 is that people are grouping themselves according to the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want me, okay, is it still okay for us, like being as Sudanese in Arabic, Kenyan in Swahili, or is that not what you mean?
What do you think? The question is, should we think of ourselves as Sudanese, then Ugandans, then Kenyans? What do you think?
Me, I was thinking, but I exactly according to my perspective.
Yeah, so what's your perspective?
Yeah. For me, I think it's not right.
You don't think it's correct. So should you identify yourself as East African compared to Southern African?
We are still doing it, I don't know that it will be correct. So if I want to think, I can either pick a random person, then we think together. We are East African, we are South Sudanese, I think.
So would you think it's right for you to look at yourself from coming from an African country, which would be a second or third world country, compared to someone who comes from the West, who comes from a first world country? You wouldn't agree with that either then? So, you said it's wrong to think of yourself as Sudanese compared to Ugandan. Yeah, so I just extended it because some people think it's not a problem to have pride in one's nationality. Because you don't think it's good, but other people here may think it's acceptable. So I just extended it to other ideas that may be more challenging for people. So one thing that comes up over and over again is the difference between a first world country and a third world country. And people tend to say, you know, I'm Sudanese or Ugandan or something because they have some level of pride. So in some way they're not just different, but different better. Isn't that why we do it? Yeah? If we were some kind of outcast tribe, I don't think we'd be boasting or proud of that. Yeah? So people don't say, I'm really proud to come from a third world country to someone from a first world country. What they tend to want to do is to show how bad a first world country is so that they can uplift their own third world country. So I agree with you. I think what happens is we tend to manipulate the data to make ourselves look better than we really are. And when people talk about Europeans trying to come into Africa and teach you how to order your lives and how to dress and how to behave, people see it as colonialism and they find it quite offensive. I'm not sure what we think about that. I think it's pretty offensive. I don't think it's right for us to do that. So we're not trying to address the issue from that perspective. We're not trying to import some kind of Western morality to yourselves. What we want to understand, and I didn't explain what it would actually look like, but just to show you that God is dealing with the same problem then as He's dealing with us now. This issue of cultural nationalism, tribalism, it's an ongoing issue, and whatever it means when it says, you shall not do so unto the Lord your God, whatever that uniform standard that we should have, I'm not trying to suggest that it's a European standard or an American standard or a Western standard, first country standard. These principles transcend those national borders. So if this was really true, it couldn't be importing Western ideology here and forcing it upon yourselves. That's not what's being addressed here. But people will often accuse us of doing that very thing. I know you weren't making that point. So the point you were making, yeah, you're beginning to see that it's wrong to think of ourselves in that way, that Sudanese are better than Ugandans. That's what you're saying, yeah? And what's the point you made about being here at the school? You made a point about the school. What was that point you were making?
Yeah, because I was seeing we're in the school, right? So, and I see that when we are seated, we see differently, thinking is really different in the rise of stuff in the group. And when you come to verse 5, is that don't look yourself as this nation, right? So that is the one. And you say, still in this school, we are doing the same thing. It means that we are grouping ourselves, different nations, right? In the school. And I think that was the context. So that is what I mean by it.
So you recognise that now. No, because you're pointing out, so you're recognising that we've got a problem. Yeah? You
say that we still have the same problem.
Yes, all I'm pointing out is that you're standing up and you're recognising that there's a problem here, because that's what we're doing. Yes? When you first came to the school 2 weeks ago, was that in your consciousness then?
Yeah, at first, sitting together, I was not seeing it, but when it comes to the level where people were thinking in their own language, their own country, that is where I come to notice that there's an issue. Because how are we going to mix if I speak with my brother outside in my own language and in their own language, and we sit together talking our own stories, and we come to the church, we do the same thing when we are doing service. I was seeing that it would be hard for us to believe it. And I think that is what is happening. We are not in a real time.
I agree. Any other comments? Good, we're all smiling. So, chapter 12 to chapter 26. What we want to do is see if we can break down these chapters into sections. Maybe we can have some kind of group heading as we go through. So if you turn to chapter 12, speaks about the Lord's chosen place of worship. We discussed that. If you drop down to verse 29, just picking up the words in verse 30, take heed to thyself. So if I said take heed to yourself, what would I be saying to you? What would I be giving you? A warning. So you actually see that begins around verse 29. So I'm suggesting that now it's talking about this warning against idolatry. If you read the verses, you can see it. I'm just going, looking at the little titles that I have in my Bible. Most of you have these, similar ones. The wording might be different. Chapter 14, it's dealing with what subject? Talks about being a peculiar people. What makes us different? Talks about cutting yourselves or any baldness. What's that, hairstyle? We're supposed to be different people. And then the rest of the chapter deals with the issue of clean and unclean meat down to verse 21. Agree with that? Then verse 22 onwards speaks about tithing. So, what have we spoken about so far? Chapter 12 began with what? The place where God chooses for worship. Don't get involved in idolatry. The subject of clean and unclean food. And then the subject of tithes or supporting the religious services of God. Chapter 15. Now it starts talking about the sabbatical year. Every 7th year. That's to the end of the chapter. Chapter 16. Passover. Chapter 16, verse 9, the Feast of Weeks. Chapter 16, verse 13, the Feast of Booths. Chapter 16, verse 18, now speaks about what subject? Judges, are we there? 16:18, judges and officers. So I want to suggest there's a break here from the first section of all these chapters, from chapter 12 to just towards the end of chapter 16. There's this whole section. What title could we give this? (12:1) to 16:17. What title would we give to this? Religious instructions. Someone spoke at the back. Religious instructions. Sorry, verse 18, chapter 16, starts talking about judges. Down into 21, it says you're not allowed to have different forms of worship, which appears to be something to do with religion. But what's it really dealing with? If you drop down to verse 6. 17:6. It's all about witnesses. It's all about judging. Verse 8, the legal work of priests and judges. Chapter 17, now it's moving on to the laws concerning the kings of Israel. And we dealt with chapter 17 before, if you remember. Which verses were we looking at then? Verses 17 and 18. It talks about how to do with kings. Then into chapter 18, the provision for the priests and Levites. Down to verse 9, 18 verse 9, abominable practices. Verse 15 speaks about what you do with prophets who shall arise. And then when you get to chapter 19, talks about laws concerning the cities of refuge or the sanctuary cities. So I'm going to make a break here to 1822. And what would this be? What title we want to give to this? This section, this clustering of laws. Civil laws. Sorry? The judiciary. Anyone else? Sister Dorcas, you had your hand up? Yeah? What are your thoughts? From chapter 16 to chapter 18, not one specific verse. What's the subject that's being addressed here? If we could just give it a title of all of these laws. What kind of laws are being addressed here? Jackie? Government? Sister Fiona, any thoughts? Concerning what subject? Okay, so let's put down what we've got so far. What did we have? We had civil and the government. Someone had their hand up? Chapter 19. Laws concerning the cities of refuge. So is the laws of the city, is that to do with the judicial system? Some said yes or no? Yeah? So we should go to 1913. Cities of refuge are to do with court cases. Verse 14. Property boundaries between you and your neighbour. Laws concerning witnesses. What subject is that? Verse 21. Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. What's that subject? How you live with your neighbour. Social. No? You?
I think what it starts doing is the social laws, how you live with your brother, how you should treat one another.
Verse 17.
Verse 17 seems to be bringing the civil aspect in. But if you look at what is being spoken of, it's more social. Because it's how if you are going to bear witnesses, you shall not bear false witness to your brother. So it's more respectable how you should respect and how you should be good to your brother.
So my brother says it's more social than judicial.
Yeah, very strong.
Anyone got any thoughts, Sister Schneider? We put it under judicial. What does verse 21 say? Sorry? Revenge. My brother at the back? Sorry? Someone can repeat that? I can't hear you or speak. Judgment. So is it revenge or is it judgment? Sister Schneider? Judgment. How do the Jews view that? They view it as revenge, don't they? Because Jesus is going to address this issue later on. And basically people think that they can essentially do what they want and take revenge upon people. But the context here, I believe, is actually if you do a crime, it tells you what the punishment is. Yeah? You hurt someone's eye, you get your eye taken out. Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. So this is a judicial statement. Okay with that or not?
I think what we've seen here, more so when we started from 19, as I said, I think it's more judicial, but it deals with how it's more of the judicial, but it's more of domestic relations, the local relations with one another on a judicial level. So it's more social, though you are doing good to another socially, but it's affecting the judiciary. Then, when I should testify good to what I've done to my brother, so that the judges can make a good decision. So I think it's touching on the social aspect.
Yeah, on what William is saying, to me, I'm viewing then that they are closely connected. You cannot separate the social and the judicial, because maybe when the judicial are relating well, maybe they are not breaking the law that is governing them. But the moment they break laws, that's where judicial now come in. So what is taking place with them is connected with the judicial, and that's why I'm viewing this like a connected story.
My brother?
So I see beginning from 17 up to
Sorry?
from the 17 up to 20 up to 21 is the same scenario.
17 to 21.
Yeah, because it's the one which the judges they are going to do, and if they have a witness that brother did wrong against me, then that the judgment is going to be excluded. So I think it is done the same way, and the reason why judgment is going to be excluded is the other people which have remained, they will know that if they do like what brother have done, then they will be like the same way. So that is what I think that is what we are complaining about.
Civil or social?
Is civil.
I'll go maybe back to verse 15. I think it's all judicial matter.
1915.
From 15 to 21.
Sorry?
I'll go back from verse 15 to verse 21 and say they're all judicial aspects. Dealing with witnesses, dealing with justice, how it's going to be served.
Anyone else? Brother Wilson? Judicial. Benjamin? Judicial? My brother? Sister Elizabeth? Judicial?
Of course, all these decisions made by the judges, they affect people at social level. And it's all instructions to do with judicial, how the judges are supposed to make rulings.
So it's not talking about people's behaviour, it's talking about when something's gone wrong, how to address the problem. That's why you say judicial.
When we go to that chapter, verse 15 is going to give us a case scenario. As I dig through,
Verse 15 is going to give us
this scenario, if someone has done a mistake, it says, "What the only condition that you can execute that someone is when you have at least 2 witnesses." Then I think verse 16 to the last verse, verse 21, is a repeat and enlargement of verse 15. It's going to explain how verse 15 really works. In a real life situation, for example, it's going to say, if a witness rise up against the man to testify against him, he's going to give instructions on how the political leaders to do to execute that
civil or social.
For me, I'm seeing from 18. So if I come to 18, there's a scenario where someone is brought to the judge and is interrogated. So if the person is interrogated and found guilty, then what happens next is given in my own words. So I see it as more of civil.
Brother William?
So I think I get the point where I say, but if we go back to when we started the judicial, the civil aspect, that is verse 16, 18, the introductory word is how judges, it starts underlining the role of judges and officers in verse 18. And I'm going to assume that is going to deal only on the judicial aspect, purely on the judicial aspect up to verse 19. So the point I'm making now, when you start coming to verse 18, you start touching on the individual members. So I'm seeing a difference between the first judicial part. I think it's basically dealing with the civil law. It's only dealing with how judges shall behave. But I think when you come to chapter 19, it's going to bring on both the judges and the domestic life, the local life of members, the individual persons.
So chapter 16, verse 18, it says, last part of the verse, the judge shall judge the people with just judgment. Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons. The behavior of the judge. If you go to 19:18, he says, the judge shall make diligent inquisition. So why those separate issues? Verse 21, and thine eye shall not pity. Who's he talking to?
It's the judge. I see the point.
Yeah?
It's the judge.
So the end of the chapter. Chapter 20. Speaks about the laws concerning warfare. So chapter 20 begins to address. When thou goest out to battle against thine enemies, and seest horses and chariots and the people more than thou, be not afraid of them, for the Lord thy God is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So he starts talking about everything that's connected with warfare, basically. What can we learn here? Any verses that stand out to you when it talks about the laws of warfare? So an enemy is going to come and you're going to go out to make battle. You're going to get ready to fight. What's the first thing that happens? Who spoke? Well, put your hand up. Don't be afraid. Which verse is that? Verse 1. Be not afraid of them. So the first thing is not to be afraid, because God's with you. Then what happens? So the priest will speak to them. So the priest has spoken to them. And then what? In fact, the priest is going to tell them what? Not to be afraid. That's verse 3. The priest comes in verse 2. And in verse 3 it says, don't be afraid, which is what basically verse 1 was. So the first thing that happens is the priest says, don't be afraid. Priest speaks to them. Then what happens? Sorry? A noise. Which verse are you in? So before we get to, so we're in verse 5. So the priest has spoken to them and says, don't be scared because God is with you. And then you get to verse 5. From whom? Doesn't say judges. It says judges in verse 5. Officers, not the judges. It's not a judicial issue, it's a military issue. So now the officers, they're going to give some instruction. You okay with that? So you have a religious instruction and a civil instruction. So it's the church-state fight that's going on here. And so most of the rest of the chapter is all going to be dealing with the officers. Verse 5, the officers. Verse 7, the officers. It says they've already told you something, now they're going to tell you some more stuff. Verse 9, and when the officers have finished speaking, what will they do? Then they're going to, after they've given them the instruction, now they're going to organize the army. It says they're going to set up captains, so they're going to set up leaders. And then it just tells you how to actually prosecute war with them, how you actually go to warfare. Anything else? So are we okay that chapter 20 is about warfare? Church and state issue, you're going to receive religious instruction and you're going to receive civil instruction. And then it tells you what to do when you fight, how to deal with your enemies. Chapter 21. This tells you how to deal with unsolved murders, criminal cases that can't be solved. This tells you how to deal with it. Verse 10. How to deal with marrying female slaves. Verse 10, when thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and the Lord thy God hath delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to be thy wife, then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head, trim her nails, put on raiment. I'll take her original clothes off and put some new clothes on. Clothes that identify her with you. What do we think about that? Sorry? Not the title, but what do we just think about? You've had some interaction with your opponent, with your enemy, and you see a beautiful woman, you desire her, so you basically take her to wife. This adversarial relationship with, I guess it's either her husband or her dad or her brother. You have this adversarial relationship with them. You like the woman and you take her to be your wife. Sound good, bad, ugly? Very ugly. Very good? You going to say anything more? Why is it so good? What good do you see in that? We'll give his name on the video later. What good do you see in that?
So, I think it's good because
taken first of all as a captive. You know the situation how she will be living when he's there just as a captive. But now when she is to be now treated as a wife, she will be very free, and even she will be having opportunity to do many things that she could not do when she is just there as a captive. So it's good for her.
Good for her.
Yes.
Verse 14, the last part of the verse. What have you just done to her?
14?
14, last part of the verse.
You have humbled her.
Very good. You must have enjoyed that. So, you've got your adversary, which is her dad, brother, or husband, and you dealt with them, and then you took the woman, and it's all good. Yep? So let's go back to our previous class. And when you want to get something from someone, what technique can you use to get what you want? Force? Persuasion? Wait there. No, wait there. Let's not help him with that one. We'll give him the clue. Okay? Force, persuasion. Okay? So, we're all friends here. We haven't said his name on the video. So it's all private between us. All okay? So, can we get a bit personal? You're about to be married soon. Okay? And you had 3 choices. Which choices? One of them you could have used force. You could have gone to a family and beat up all the men and take her. Been really good for her. You could have just said, look, I'm nice. She's nice. Let's be reasonable. You didn't choose either of those 2. Which one did you choose? What did you do to get your future wife? You didn't?
Yes.
What's that called? Everyone help him. Bribery. So the reason you like this model so much is obvious to Sister Fiona. Because she says it's ugly and you say this is beautiful. Because that's exactly what you're doing right now. Our brother is a spiritual man. So it's not humiliating him and we're keeping it private. But I just wanted to show what we think is normal is actually this whole thing. In my study it says marrying female captives. We could call it collateral damage, the spoils of war. But we dress it up in nice language today. And we call it dowry, or you have your own term for that. But dowry is the word that I understand. You pay, I don't know if it's cows in Uganda, but you pay the cows and you get your wife. It's all one of those 3 things. If you had a choice, which one would you choose? Force. It's cheap. Isn't that what they did in the book of Genesis? That wasn't warfare, was it? That was just straight lust. We're not very different to how the Israelites work and the way we think. Okay? So, I wouldn't be so personal with other people because I think we're friends and, you know, I'm not, you won't take this personally. Yeah? And everyone here is your friend. We won't dwell on that. We'll move on. The inheritance of the rights of the firstborn. a rebellious son. Talks about people who are being cursed if they've done some wrong. Now into 22. My thing here says various laws. Just various laws all put together. Verse 13. The laws concerning sexual immorality. Laws concerning sexual immorality. So did I give you the verse? Sorry, I thought I gave you the verse. From verse 13. 23:1. Those people who are not allowed to come to church, they're not allowed to be part of the congregation, the assembly. How to deal with uncleanness. Verse 9. Then just some random laws from verse 15. Miscellaneous random laws. 24. Laws concerning divorce. Verse 5. 24 verse 5. Again, some miscellaneous laws. Verse 10. If you lend something to someone, you can't go into their house and get it without their permission. You have to stand outside and ask for it. You can't get your things back by force. Chapter 25, verse 5. Laws concerning marriage again. This is the marriage of the priests. Then into chapter 26, the offerings of first fruits and tithes. How all of that is supposed to work. And then chapter 27 speaks about the blessings and the curses. So, chapter 20 to chapter 26. What's the last verse? 18? 19. We'll put social. Let's read from commentary. See if I can find it. Yes. So, Deuteronomy 12 to 26 speaks about social, civic, and political issues. Social, civic, and political issues. So our designation was slightly different. We had social, we have civic, and it says political, and we've got religion. So maybe this commentator is wrong. Maybe we should review. But we're breaking it down into these different sections. If we're okay with that, our verse is 22 verse 5, because we're in the social section. Do we agree with that? So if it's the social section, what's it dealing with? How should we approach the subject? How should we be approaching this subject if it's in the social realm?
I think if it's in the social realm, we should approach it. I mean, this is the way we should live together, or the way we should treat one another.
So the way we should live together, the way we should treat one another.
And the way we should handle issues that arise among us.
So you said the way we should treat.
The way we should live together, treat one another, and handle issues.
The way we should treat one another, and the way we should live together, and one more. Handle what? Anyone else? Which chapter? 26:18. 26:18. And the Lord hath avouched thee this day to be his peculiar people, as he hath promised thee, and that thou shouldest keep all his commandments.
So that such blessing unto us according to your will live by the word that proceeded from the mouth of the Lord.
Good point. Brother Andrew, we're dealing with these social issues. So these laws, how should we approach these verses? As, sorry? As moral issues. So this would be moral as well, wouldn't it? But there's a difference between them. Sister Emma. Man's relationship with... Okay, so I guess you're going to say this is man with God. This is human with human. So how we should treat each other, how we should live together, how we should deal with or handle the issues that we have between ourselves. In this section here, 16, 17, 18, 19, these 4 chapters is dealing with if things go wrong, what the consequences and how you deal with those issues. Consequences of what goes wrong, perhaps you'll deal with some of those punishments, and how the people in responsible positions should deal with these issues. We could argue, we haven't studied the chapters, that this tells you how to deal with these problems, and this tells you how to deal with these problems. Would that be a sort of a fair assessment? If you're not following the religious laws, it tells you how to deal with those. If you're not following the social laws, it should tell you how to deal with those as well. Yeah? That's why when we're in chapter 19, what did Brother Dickens say about chapter 19, the last part? What point was he making? When he was, I'll say disagreeing with Brother Williams. What did he say? Do you remember? Could you remind us, what did you say, the last part of 19?
I said the last part of 19 is, yes, the social issue, but it's connected to the judicial or the civil, because when the judicial are doing things rightly, the judicial does not come to them to make the implementation of the thing. But when they are not maybe treating each other well, when they are not living together well, then the judicial comes to.
So I like that point that he made. You're dealing with social issues, of course. And in those last few verses of 19, he said, if you obey all the rules, 19 doesn't even happen to you. It's when you break the rules, break social order, now we're going to be taught how to deal with that situation. Tells you what the punishment is. Tells you how to deal with those court cases. So a couple of things we saw. If you're a judge, you need to be diligent and fair. Can't get bribed. You need to give a fair punishment. If someone poked you in the stomach and hurt you, what would the punishment be? It has to be according to the crime. So the way it's brought to view in that chapter, it says, eye for an eye. Yep. If someone pokes your eye out, you can't chop their head off. It's not an equivalent punishment. So the punishment has to fit the crime. So, of course, there's an interaction between them two. You see social and civil, but it really is how to deal with social problems. When they go wrong, it tells you how to deal with it. That's what that chapter is dealing with, the last part that we saw. We can see that. I'm sure if we went back into those chapters, if you start saying, I'm not going to go to Passover, or I'm not going to pay my tithes, or I'm going to do something, what would we know? We'd find somewhere here that would tell you how that's going to be dealt with. We okay with that? So our verse is in here. It's 22 verse 5. So what's the focus of attention? What's the focus of attention? Is it how to deal, if this is crime going on, yeah? Something's gone wrong. It says everyone has to, if we do it the way most people think, everyone has to wear their separate clothes. So if you wear your separate clothes, does this one come into effect? No. So now you're wearing mixed clothes, you're wearing each other's clothes, and then what would happen? You'd have to go to court, you have to come back here and receive some punishment of some kind. But we're in this verse, we're in this section, and it doesn't tell you what the punishment is. There's no punishment that's being spoken of. All it just tells you is how to behave. It doesn't tell you what happens if you don't behave properly. We okay with that?
So I was trying to have some different views on the structure you are doing on the board. I was trying to understand chapter 20. I don't see it being social issues of how we should treat each other and behave. How, as we have seen, it's dealing with military issues, how they are to tackle, how they are to deal with the enemy. So I was trying to see, like, what if you divide the issue of the government, you say that one is dealing, chapter 16 to 19 is dealing with the judiciary. I would also say chapter 20 dealing with the executive, you have part A and B dealing with the government. You exclude chapter 20 from the social.
And you want to put it where?
I would put it in the verse, the judiciary. So I would mark part A, 16, dealing with the judiciary, part B dealing with the executive. So the judiciary is making laws and implementing how to pronounce judgments. Then part B is the executive, which is the form of the government where they are dealing with the external enemies.
We'll see as we go along if you're correct. You may be correct.
I think chapter 20 is exposed of the social issues.
It's social issues?
As the exposed of social issues still is divided now. For us to put the button, there are some social issues here to be solved. So you can straighten the issue.
So you see it's in the right place, social. Have I understood you correctly? Okay, so 22.5 is definitely in the social arena. It's not telling you what to do if it goes wrong. It just says, shouldn't go wrong. We okay with that? So let's go to 22.5.
I think if you look at chapter 20, though it seems to be dealing with the military.
Tell us the point you want to make first.
Yeah. So I'm saying chapter 20 seems to be dealing with the military part of it, but when you go down and start reading.
Tell us the point you want to make, then tell us the point.
Oh yeah, the point is chapter 20 it deals with the law to be observed when they are going to go to war, how they should react when they are going to go to a
The
battle.
point you want to make is it social or civil? That's the point you want to make.
Social.
So you want to make the point that it's social.
Yeah.
What's your defense?
My defense is if you read the verses, they are telling them, they are trying to give the laws on the laws that are supposed to be observed, not the laws that are supposed to be kept when they are going to war. So it's how to relate when they are in a situation, when they are going to battle, how do they relate to one another. So I think it's more into social.
Okay? 22 verse 5. We've already begun to address some of the issues here. We had this verse and we broke it down into 4 parts. What's the first part? What did we say in the first part? The woman shall not. You okay with that? The next part underneath says what? Sister Elizabeth, what does it say? What do we put here? Underneath. Repeat and enlarge. Look here. Look here. Progression. Repeat and enlarge. Neither shall a man the woman shall not, neither shall a man. Are we okay with that? So what do we say here? My sister, behind Brother Rogers, what can you see from that? What's jumping out at you? Sorry? So we're comparing and contrasting. Anything jump out at you? No? Okay, so let's do it together then. We'll just take that and we'll bring it up here, okay? Yeah? So tell me the first word. Word. First word. Tell me the last word. Okay, now what you're seeing. Tell me what you're seeing. Okay, so woman, next what do we see? Sorry? What are you observing now? Sorry? Some similarity? No, similarity is not the right word. Don't help her. Okay, the next word here. And here? You can see that now? What's that? Do you know the name of it? A mirror. Okay, so we can see a mirror there. As soon as you look at a portion of writing a sentence, if you see a mirror and you can identify it, it's clear to see. What do you know? What do you know once you found a mirror? Who spoke? So yes, a parable. That's just the methodology that we're using. Now you've seen, if you see a mirror, you don't see a parable. The mirror is the parable. So I could say, now you see the parable, what do you know? Why do we even care if there's a parable there? Why do we care if there's a chiasm or a mirror? Why do we care? Why do you care, my brother? Do you care? Or you're not bothered? No, so the one behind, sorry. Do you care? Why?
The reason why I'm going to pray is that that one is a guide that is going to give me a clear understanding.
Clear understanding.
Yeah, of what that one is.
Okay, so it helps to give a clear understanding. You said yes as well, my brother. Why do you care? I'm asking the one in front. Why do you care?
If I have identified whether it's a chiasm, we have rules now. You start putting rules to understand what is going on.
Good. We have rules that tell us what's going on. As soon as you see a chiasm, what we have done is taken a linear verse, linear words, and we started getting the scissors and cutting it up. That's what we've done. So as soon as we see a chiasm, what is it showing us? It's proving what?
That we have developed a structure.
Say that again?
Structure, we have made it into a structure.
So it's proven that the structure that we have created, because we created a structure here, is correct. It becomes self-evident that our structure is now correct. We haven't even worked out what the rest of it means, but we know that what we're doing is correct because we've created a chiasm. And a chiasm is one of the strongest proofs that you can have that what you're doing is correct. Are we okay with that? So it's not something to be passed by lightly. The other thing is, if you just read the verse, and I don't know how much of, if you were interested in dress before, but this issue of dress has been around for, say, 6 months in our movement. It's been a bit longer, but 6 months. And everyone's attention has been focused upon this verse. Yes? So you've all looked at it in detail. Some of you have taught on this subject. Yes? So how many people before this class knew that there's a chiasm there, had seen that, observed it? Anybody? No? Okay, the thing is, it's not easy to see when you just read. This is the power of structures or using a whiteboard and doing graphical representation, because things that are invisible suddenly become visible. Yeah? So, as you write it out, without even realizing it, I mean, now it's so clear you can see it, but if you were to write it out in the structure, you just say, woman, begins with woman, ends with man. And in fact, when we looked at this, and I read it out to you, a couple of classes ago now, I said that's where we're going to go, but I didn't do it on the board, I just read it out. What proof did I use that we can even do this? How did I make the link? What methodology did I use to begin with? I proof text. And what word did I proof text? Do you remember? I said shall. The woman shall, the man shall. So I'd linked the shall together. So that was a really preliminary basic approach, and it's not guaranteed, it's not foolproof, it's dangerous. So this is why I counsel people to be very cautious about proof texting. It's dangerous. It's so easy to make mistakes. But that's what we did. And now, if we can say that was our guess, now what we can do is prove without a shadow of a doubt that guess was correct. Because now we have a structure in place. And we don't even know what the verse means yet. Are we okay with that? Okay. So some people might think that's trivial. I think it's important. Next one. So, Sister Elizabeth, is it making sense now when you said you didn't know which direction I was headed in? So now we've got that. So the next one. The next one is what here? Where? Sister Fiona. The next one here. Don't shout out, please. Sorry? Pertain it? No. No. You wear something. If you're a woman, if you're a man, you do what? Has to be the same as wear. Don't shout out, please. Sorry? Put on. Good. Are we all in agreement so far? Yeah? Sister Dorcas? Next one. The woman shall not wear the next bit. Sorry? No, tell me what it says in the verse. With verse 5. Can't see? My sister? Nope. Nope. Sorry? Pertaineth, you said? All the bits that go with it. That? Good. You okay with that, Sister Dorcas? The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth. Yes? What goes here? So we're just going to put garment. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth. What goes here? Unto a man. And this says a woman. Are we okay with that breakdown? Everybody fine? Any questions? So we know we're on the right approach. We haven't dealt with the whole verse. We've skipped out the abomination bit. All we've done is a repeat and enlarge. We know it's correct because the first part is a chiasm. So it gives us the evidence that we need that this is the way to structure the verse. Everyone okay with that? And what we want to observe is what? What do you want to observe? Obviously we've got a chiasm here. Says a man, a woman. So we know the back end is the same. It's not a chiasm, it's repeat and enlarge. And this one is a repeat and enlarge, but it's a chiasm. So if we just took this at a bigger level, what do we have? Woman, man, man, woman. We can see that? So we're going to take the whole verse and it says woman, where that which pertaineth unto a man. Yes? Woman and man. That's that one and that one. Then it says, Neither shall a man put on the garment of a woman. Yes? So we've got woman, man, man, woman. So we've created a second chiasm. We can see that? So now we created a chiasm at the beginning. We had to repeat and enlarge at the end. And now we've got a chiasm for the whole thing. So we've got multiple lines of evidence that the way we're structuring this is correct. Everybody okay with that? Sister Emma? Oh, you want to put pertaineth there? Well, it doesn't change any of that. It wouldn't affect that. What does pertaineth mean? Sorry? Belong. And so what's missing here is what? What word is missing here? No, I'm not worried about the apostrophe. What's missing there? Who owns the garment? It's inferred in that. So that's why I kept it in this way, because it's what belongs to a man and what belongs to a woman. Oh, you're saying this? So you want to do this? Sorry? Here. Yeah. That's what you want to do, yeah? Yeah, but I want to keep it separate. I want to put them in certain boxes. So that. Yeah, go ahead.
So, like that, it is stand in the position of garment. Then, we pertain is you will come with the second sentence, which is going to be shown by apostrophe. So, what you're supposed to do, you take with pertain to man at the same point and let that go with garment. Then you remove that off and put apostrophe written on there. Then it is okay.
So she's done the same thing. She's just taken the word apostrophe and put of.
No, let it be like that. It having no problem. Remove that off. Then take put apostrophe. Then what you need to do? Take with to the other side. Then let that remain with garment.
You had the hand up. I'm listening to someone.
I think that makes sense. To me, that is the best. The way it is right now. Because if you look at me, I'm having problems seeing that wheat and garment being the same. If you change the line.
I have a question. Are we deconstructing the verse?
What was the question?
Are we deconstructing the verse?
Were we deconstructing it? What does that mean?
Like sometimes you get rewrite verse and you understand you reconstruct and construct it back again. Because I'm seeing we are adding foreign words which are not in the verse. I thought we were taking pieces of the verse and lining them up.
Yes. So we took the verse as it was, the original words, and lining them up, and the people say the way it was lined up wasn't correct. That was Sister Emma's point. It wasn't lined up correctly. So do you think it was lined up correctly before? Okay, so I'll go back to what it was. It was that. That's how it was originally, I think. Yeah? So Sister Emma's saying that's actually incorrect. Because you and I don't understand grammar. Apparently. Sister Elizabeth does. So she just paraphrased it to get it to work again. You're an expert on grammar.
There's the original, you paraphrase it, but finally what you do is you get your paraphrase to fit into the original.
So we jumped ahead with the paraphrase. Brother Denny said the paraphrase works good now. He liked that paraphrase. But you said, hold on, we're going too quickly. So we've come out of the paraphrase, and this is what we originally had. And we're being told that this structure is not correct because it's not lining up properly in its original. Does that make sense? Does it make sense why she's saying it's not lining up? Pertaineth to means the man's. So, and it says the woman's means pertaineth to. That's what she's saying. So pertaineth would have to come here. That's what she's arguing. You agree? That easily? Brother William?
I still don't understand why she feels that particular should be for women. Because in the verse, it's the garment that belongs to a woman, so it's not we are putting out.
Okay, garment belongs. Okay? Garment belongs. Okay? So I'll put garment belongs. Yeah? So which word is belongs up here? That belongs. So pertaineth is belongs. Yeah? But there is no belongs in the verse. There's no word belongs. So where is belongs in this line here? Where did it say belongs? Possession. So if that's the possession, the belongs is in here. So that's where they're saying put the pertaineth here. Anyone else? Oh, Sister Elizabeth first. Yeah. Yes, in the original it's the other way round, but I've had to structure it to line it up. So I get that.
Yeah, so brother was like, you should make it as a verse, it's really conflict. Because we're not going to give it the mirror. You can't find it.
So if I put woman's here and garment here,
It will change the meaning down there.
it will change.
It will change the meaning like woman, man.
It doesn't change the meaning will still be the same. It will just change the structure, the lining up of it.
But still what I was trying to add is different because if you say woman's garment, then garment to the woman is.
Yes, I think everybody agrees that what you said was the same, but they didn't want to change the words yet. They didn't want to paraphrase yet.
Yeah, but now unto a man, then a woman's, I said it different.
So that's why they want to do this. The garment belongs to a man, belongs to a woman. Sorry? Oh, you want to put the which on the other side as well? Okay. Anyone else? There were hands here. Sorry?
Because that's what I want to say. That we point to the garment. And pertains unto a man is woman's. So if you want to define woman's, it is garment. If you want to define what pertains to a man, it is that which is where, which is garment.
So
I think that structure is okay.
you want to put the which with the that.
Yeah, that which is garment. That which.
And they say it should be which pertaineth.
I only think if we are using the verse as it is, then it's going to be like that. But if, because when you look at how we started with this first, they always show that what is up is portrayed by that is which. There is some similarity between the two. Because I'm seeing, just because we want to use the verse, we can leave it at that. But if it was not there, then we would put back the line, then we put pertain.
I didn't understand anything you just said. I'm sorry, what did you just say?
I'm saying,
No, my mind went blank. It wasn't you.
so I'm saying, just because
Is that correct? You don't agree with that or you agree with it?
I have my model,
You have your own model.
yeah. To me,
So that's wrong. You don't agree with that.
no, I'm saying if you're going to, unless when you're not allowed to add any word to the verse.
We'll add it afterwards.
Because if you're to add it, you can put back the line and you put under the garment pertaineth, because that which is the garment.
Could I put which belongs?
Then you remove the apostrophe.
Yes. I put that belongs to a woman. Take the apostrophe off. You agree with that? So if I was going to say that belongs, the garment that belongs to a woman, is there a problem with that? I didn't want to put which because it was the same word. I want to use a different word. So that is going to line up with that, isn't it? Which belongs, that belongs.
I think in this case, that is the garment.
That one is. That's the garment here. So if I put that phrase in, doesn't that make that come over here? Which pertaineth, that belongs. The garment that belongs. That which pertaineth.
So why don't we use which then?
Well, here, I could use which. Which and that are the same word. They're interchangeable.
Then we remain with that and the garment, then which pertaineth with which belongs to.
Yeah, that's what I just said. So this goes here with that.
Yes. Then instead of that, here on that, we put which.
It's the same thing. I didn't want to put which because then you do it by word association. But you want to see it by concept. If I did that sentence, I can say the garment that belongs to a woman. You've got no problem with that. The garment which belongs to a woman, the garment that belongs to a woman. It's the same thing, the same word. Yeah? So, if we do that, then you're okay with the structure? We just got to move that one over. Now is everyone okay? It's the first time I've seen you smiling for a couple of days. You're happy? Yeah, totally. Everyone good with that? So, we've lined everything up so far. So in the next class, we'll dig a bit further into what we're doing. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we ask and pray that you would guide, direct and bless us. Shield us and strengthen us, Lord, as we delve deeper into study and meditation upon your word. We pray and ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.